a lot of them they share like sometimes they are treated like the nanny, right? So for the business unit leaders, like, okay, I will talk to you about business. Anything else, like you're not happy, things like that, just go to HR and let HR handle it. What is your view on that? That leaders kind of like push everything to HR and like, you be the nanny, help me out. All right, so welcome everyone. So this is HR Unfiltered, and it's going to be an awesome time together with Hammad, and we're going to be talking really about this whole idea of HR and some learning lessons we can have. So I'm your host, Jason, and I'm a leadership and performance coach. Hammad, would you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, sure. So, again, my name is Hammad. Been in the industry of HR for the last 15 years say now. Started off in UK. Have been lucky enough to being exposed to different continents. So started off in the UK, then have been placed to work in Pakistan, Dubai, South Africa, then Singapore. So been in Singapore for the last 3.5 years. Totally exciting a place. Specialize in HR business partnering and change management. One area that is very, very close to my heart. Alongside talent and organizational effectiveness as well. So these are some really, really exciting exposures that you can find in HR, and I've been lucky to be a part of it so far.
All right, thank you so much. I am always curious whenever I talk to HR leaders. HR is not something that your parents will tell you go and join HR, right? So be a dentist, be a doctor, be a lawyer, engineer, whatever it is. So how on earth did this journey of you being a HR leader start?
So I mean, now that you've mentioned it, that parents do not really recommend it, I think I'll probably share a fact from my side. I thought HR is gonna be an easier field to get into to get into a career. That's one reason I probably looked at it as a perspective to get into. When I talk about leadership roles for the last few years while I've been exposed to them, I feel that my real leadership origin story started off working in a factory role, and that was basically working directly with colleagues on the shop floor. So the concept of TPM, Lean Six Sigma, really opened my eyes, and made me feel and realize how real leadership impacts desired behaviors, and how far I was off from being seen as a leader that maybe inspires versus a leader that is, just getting leadership through inheritance. So
Mhm.
the concept of servant leadership, where the focus on moves on from a leader to more towards the team. Like an example of that could be, rather than having people working for you, servant
Yep.
leadership basically inverts the thinking, where the leader works for people. And that is something, when I got exposed to servant leadership, I really realized that how far off I was off in terms of my leadership journey. That experience really built on my leadership skills to be more inclusive and supportive towards people who drive real value to the business. So a brilliant exposure while working closely with people on the floor and understanding what really motivates or develops them. So I'd probably say that was one area in a plant role where I really it ignited in me that I am far off from where I should be in my leadership story.
Awesome. So, yeah, I hear that a lot about servant leadership, and I think a little bit more the old school would think that it's more directive. But you mentioned this really one point that we see our staff and all that as we serve them, because there's a saying that when we serve them well, they will serve our clients well as well. So it's really the idea of heart. The heart is really towards HR, and HR is really towards people. So if I were to just ask you, out of curiosity, then at what point do you feel that, okay, I think instead of doing so many other things, I want to do HR?
So I think one thing that I probably really really helps and maybe complements my personality is to work closely with people.
Right.
Organizational psychology is something that has been very close to my heart. So I
Mm,
do a lot of reading when it comes to organizational psychology and people psychology as well. So I think I'd probably say that that has been one igniting factor for me to pursue a career in HR. On a serious note, the previous justification that I gave was actually a joke. So yeah, that would be the main reason why I thought that I'd probably get into the field of HR and probably excel in it as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think people in HR, we really want to understand people, understand how they tick, what motivates them, as you mentioned, what inspires them. And we know that the old school way of just pay and promotion doesn't work,
Exactly.
right?
I think
So
there's
if I were to ask
too
you,
wider than that.
yeah, especially now, right, with the whole idea of great resignation and all that, I think a lot of us in HR, we're trying to grasp the idea of how do we get people to stay, but yet perform well without just talking about pay and promotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's everything else. So if I were to ask you then, in your journey of leadership, right, what is the some of the learning lessons that you picked up along the way that you felt that, hey, wow, this made me a leader that I am. I learned about this and this along the way.
Mm. Jason, I would say, there's actually two key lessons that, have made me realize real flaws in my leadership style. And that's where my learning came from as well. So, it helped me identify areas where I could actually improve. First is the people themselves, we cannot see them as the same. And if you allow me,
Yes.
I'd probably use a word that might be a bit slang, but everybody has their own mojo. And when I
Yep.
say mojo, I mean that everyone requires a different level of convincing. I cannot sell a rock to everyone. Everyone has a different set of learning agility or change agility, and everybody is on their own path of development. It could be in terms of where they want to get into. It could also be when they want to get into. So everybody has a different set of motivation. There might be a time where you really need to roll up your sleeves and help an individual see through change. At another time, you would need to man up and tell it like it is. That is where you're giving feedback that is honest and candid too. So that
Right.
might be a tough conversation, but it is needed sometimes. This leads, maybe to my second point. So first being, that people are different,
Yep.
and the second point would be more around that where leadership itself needs to shift gears as well.
Mm.
There is no set methodology for one to follow, otherwise I'd probably be a PhD. I've also learned that for one to be an inspirational leader, we need to move on from the philosophy of being liked. It's more
Mm.
around being respected, and I think you probably get more respective when you're giving people honest feedback. Building trust and empathy are other factors that are also imperative. If we take an example, a recent example of the pandemic itself,
Yep.
it has been such a key factor for leaders to bring the focus to on trust, empathy towards their team, and also making sure that we're giving them honest, candid feeded when it's required. Because now with work from home and all, I mean, we've seen distances come there as well. So I think people have also gotten into a situation where I feel that they've also become brave as well to give feedback, to realize where they go, where they falter, and to realize where they can develop as well. Um, so I'd say these two factors are very important. Having said that, all that I have, to be honest, one of my
Hmm.
leaders that I really look up to shared something very interesting 2 weeks back, and I really reflected on it. He said that leadership is an unfinished business. Now, like, take a pause and imagine how powerful this five-letter sentence actually is. It
Right.
makes me reflect that while you ask me on the lessons I have learned,
Mm.
it is actually going to be an ongoing process. So tomorrow, if you ask me the question, I'd probably have a different answer to it. And I will continue to learn a new lesson every day. But when I look at my current leadership skills, I feel that two things that I've really wanted to play on is one, understanding people that they're different, and
Yep.
understanding leadership as well, that it could be different at the time that you're maybe tackling something or the other.
Right. I like the way that you say it, and another way that I say it is instead of like is different folks, different strokes,
Yes, exactly,
right?
absolutely.
So you cannot. It's almost like it's not a mathematical equation. You can do the same thing to another person, and you get horrible results, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, so the idea of leadership is, and even in HR, that we want to be able to cater it. So if I ask you, like, when you talk about all these principles in leadership, then how does this help you in your role in HR? Because your role in HR is also the idea of we spot talent, we understand talent, we put them in the right place, we help them to grow. How does that help you? This whole idea of everyone has their own mojo.
So from a perspective of how it helps me in HR, I think it basically gives us a lot of what do you call it, leeway to play in convincing the business as well that, when we talk about leadership itself, nobody can be a perfect leader, and perfect in itself is an imperfect. So I think it helps, when you're coaching leaders alongside you, that, when you're talking about their teams, you're probably,
Yep.
giving them insights where one person might be different from another. I think the business also sees it this way, in a way, and they're able to, they're able to see that end in sight where where you'd probably see that a line manager or a leader might be able to, tackle different situations in a different way. If that is something that happens, I feel you'd probably have done your job well as an HR person. For you as an HR person, again, one thing that we need to be very clear on is that, we are not a business decision maker, so we are
Yeah.
basically business facilitators. And for us, to maneuver behaviors, it's basically how we do it as well. So I think the how part plays very important a role in making sure that we succeed, and that's why it's imperative for us to, maybe act as advisors or coach for the business as well, to make sure that the right behaviors are instilled in the organization.
Awesome. One thing I always, a lot of friends in HR, so a lot of them they share like sometimes they are treated like the nanny, right? So for the business unit leaders, like, okay, I will talk to you about business. Anything else, like you're not happy, things like that, just go to HR and let HR handle it. What is your view on that? That leaders kind of like push everything to HR and like, you be the nanny, help me out.
I think it happens. Luckily for me, I think I've been lucky enough not to be exposed to it directly.
Awesome.
But to be honest, with the organizations that I've worked with, I think they've relatively been mature, and the concept of, this HR business partnering has always been there since I have joined.
Mm,
So luckily, I've not been exposed to that. But definitely, I mean, it happens to a situation where you'd probably feel that, a harsh feedback can be something that can be given by HR, whereas cold feedback or something that, is a happy moment can be shared with the line by the line manager. I think
yeah,
it is a challenge that stays in every organization, and for us, it is important to, again, maybe, drive those triggers where we are probably able to give them insights.
mm,
Leaders or people managers give them insights and the confidence and the tools that they need to give feedback rightly. That goes a long way. I think it also helps, when you're probably I'll give you an example. For example, if you have a an average performing team and their
okay,
team members are basically, all on exceed expectation ratings, I think an insight like this, gives a realistic view. It's like showing a manager the real mirror in terms of how the business is performing as compared to how the people are rated. It
yeah.
shows a style in weak leadership, and that's something, if you drive the right triggers, you can maneuver them in a way.
Yes, yes, totally. So sometimes, yep, they give higher scores than they want to, and not understanding that the business part of it is important. So if I were to ask you, interestingly, there are so many different practices, and in HR, if you go to any conference, there are thousands of different ways to grow people, to manage people, to really take out the potential in people. In your view, what is the best practices that you have adopted or you have focused on in terms of people development?
Yep, sure. So Jason, if I just Google right now, yeah, and
Yep,
if I look at, people development practices in HR, I'd probably see so many. You'd probably have a Corn Ferry, you'd probably have a BCG, you'd probably have a PwC offering something or the other. The
yep,
linkage that I see in them is basically they're very similar. So while we talk about, give me a moment to maybe go a bit granular to
sure.
provide some perspective. Yeah, as people development can be a very wide topic.
Yes.
One thing that we really need to focus on is to understand the person himself, the employee himself, what motivates him to develop or not. The tool you'd be able to find, and that's
Mm,
where I feel that, the change or the current best practice has more evolved towards behavior as compared to the tools itself. We've had this 9 box performance versus potential model. We've had performance ratings since sliced bread. A particular role can be, exciting for one individual while it may be of very low interest for another. So how do we, plot one person in a potential role in the future where he might not even be interested? So I think it's more around how to use these tools and look at, development in a very focused and a customized manner. It is important to see opportunities in line, obviously, with business need. Needless to say it, And also, as I mentioned, people aspiration. There is where that is where people will really make a shift from doing an everyday job to more value creation for the business. If I look at performance differentiation, I've seen in the organizations that I've been a part of, with time I've seen the models change, but the
Mhm.
methodology not much. And I've seen, the benefit that has come out of it has been the it has been higher scrutiny around how we analyze talent, more focused development measures around, career shaping experiences versus a training program. So I think it's gotten a bit wider, where if I probably go in my organization and say that, if I want to develop this individual, we probably have to go to a training, I'd probably be asked to leave the room because they'll probably make me a joke. So I think for the overall development package comes out to be wider or more diverse as compared to a training program. And that's where, I feel that that is where the real best practices evolved. People behavior, line manager and leaders behavior, overall values, purpose is something that is very, highly been talked about, and I think everybody joins that bandwagon. So I feel that these are things, that have really evolved with time and have created their importance. So I'd say they change, as I said, that they change in bits and bobs, but the
Yeah.
way we use them, has really evolved for the better.
Right. So to really crystallize what you mentioned is really the idea that we look into the person. There are many tools out there, but we look into the person's aspirations, values, what they want in their career, what they feel excited about. Some tasks, some people feel excited, some people don't want to go there. And from there, our role is to understand that person. Then after that, find the tools for it.
Exactly. I mean, a development opportunity for two high potentials can be, one could be, executive coaching, as
Yeah.
compared to the other person could be totally on the job, where we are focusing on a next level role for this individual. So, so it has to be really customized and be focused on what we want. I think that's something very important to instill, really, real career shaping experiences for an individual.
Right. It does sound like I just want to hear from you. These conversations about career, does it go into the business unit leader and do you support them? Or is it more your side and the HR side, we talk to them and all that, and we tell the business unit leader? What is it more for you?
So for me, it has been more, business leader owning it,
Yeah.
and we facilitate. So we are basically, we can be seen custodians of the process
Hmm.
while we advise and give feeds. But our leaders would probably be the people who own the process itself. And I'd say, not because of the fact that I'm working in the organization and I'm saying it because of that, but I feel that our leaders do it very well. They're very, very strong when it comes to, people development. They're very sincere when it comes
Hmm.
to engaging our people, looking after, how what would be the next role for that individual. I think we really go into scrutinizing and seeing if this is the next right opportunity for this individual or not. So I think the ownership in organizations, I'd probably say it's different.
Yeah.
We will all get there eventually. Everybody has to, follow the fashion. But I feel that, everybody, as I said, that when we talk about individuals being on their own path in terms of timelines, organizations are there as well. So I basically have been in touch with, big multinationals as well, where we've seen tools there,
Hmm.
but the usage might be comparatively lesser as compared to how maybe other organizations are doing it. And that's where everybody is. There it's a journey, and
Yeah.
everybody takes their own pace.
Yeah. One interesting thing is when I talk to so many different HR directors, some of them through the years and through different people there, they have certain seasons and fads, right? So, oh, this few years we're going to do this, we're going to be big on this, right? We're going to be awesome in this. Then after that, that dies down because sometimes the people don't get the ownership, the leaders don't get the ownership, and then they go to the HR and says, "What's next?" Right? And then there's, "Oh, this is another fad. This new thing is coming out. Oh, we're going to do that." And I do see that wave coming in and out, and these are for large organizations. Why do you think that it keeps happening? Like, oh, this is the new fad. This is the new fad for the next 3 years.
So I'd probably take an example maybe of a tech company that
Yeah,
can be fast paced, and that's
yeah,
maybe That's maybe, the methodology they follow. I think with organizations, because of the fact that they're in different level of maturities, I
Yeah.
think you'd probably see, one that has set processes that they totally believe in, and they're totally in line with the purpose, overall purpose of the organization, which is maybe people development or whatever that you want to call it. There might be certain organizations that are actually in an experimentation phase. So, what works today might not work tomorrow
Mm.
because of the fact that, it did not work in the organization,
Right.
or also because of the fact that the industry might be doing something differently.
Mm.
So I think it comes out to be that way. As I said, that, the most important thing is an experimentation. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
The most important thing is changeability. For an organization to, maybe survive or operate in an environment as per current situation,
Hmm.
it really needs to be agile in terms of change. It needs to be agile in terms of learning. Experimentation, successes, failures will come with time. But I probably say that, that's it's basically a maturity level of an organization at every particular industry.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That's great insight. So, Hammad, one more thing I want to ask. When it comes to HR, there's so many different things that is coming forward. This whole idea of HR tech, this whole idea of like every conference is going to be different, right? And now we're opening up, then we're going to go to these conferences. What do you think in terms of just the near future, and if you can know also even the further future, what do you think is the landscape of HR is going to be in the future? And how can leaders now, looking at that, adapt their policies or their decisions right now?
Mm. So if you ask me, how do I see HR
Yeah,
as for tomorrow,
yeah,
I feel really excited, and you'd probably see it from the smile on my face. I think the business will expect more from HR from
yeah.
here on. And the reason that I said is that, and we should be expecting more from ourselves too.
Yes.
I mean, with the changing dynamics, I think a lot of spotlight has come on HR, where you'd probably say that the relevance from maybe yesterday is actually from today is more from the relevance from yesterday.
Yeah.
I see HR driving more value creation. We can also expect HR being exposed to opportunities where they are able to, steer the business directly. One exciting time that has recently happened. Chief HR officer of a multinational, Lena Nair, is now the CEO of L'Oreal Global. So I think that's a change that really excites. So her going to a chief executive role for, one of the largest HPC niche HPC companies, it's really exciting to see for an HR professional. There could be a possibility that HR might be, guiding business through expected and unexpected disruptions. The pandemic is actually one key example where we saw a
Exactly.
lot of and value creation from HR. You talk about emergency response, you talk about employee well-being, employee engagement, physical well-being, mental well-being. You talk about devising work from home and office strategies. HR was active,
Yeah.
and it was an exciting time because a lot of organization would probably, have judged or ascertained that their HR teams are very agile, and when it comes to, the when it's pressure time.
Yeah.
uh, HR teams, have and will, I feel, in the future become more agile. There would be wider opportunities as compared to what they have now. There will be probably faster decision making due to the technologies that are coming in. One example could be Workday. There will be improved collaboration. I think ways of working might change for the better as well. It might move from generalist to more specialist, where you'd probably see, your HR business partners creating more business valued additions. You'd have your people services team that's going to be strong on analyzing data.
Hmm.
If I specifically talk around digitization, I see HR people, playing a huge role in building insights and analytical capability for people managers to hire, develop, and retain the best talent. Employee experience will be literally paramount, and for that, HR will need to really create moments that really matter through deeper analytics. Take it engagement, talent attraction, progression, even attrition. These will all be deep dived onto just to make sure that we are keeping on that talent that can have an opportunity outside and who we cannot stop. So I think it'll be tight knit.
Yeah.
Organizations will become a bit more protective towards their people. And really, really, I think it's going to be an exciting time ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like a whole whirlwind of things happening, especially since the pandemic, where HR was just pushed to the forefront. And you're right in terms of all the well-being, everything. HR is coming up with policies about this. Who else to do it should be HR. So HR came into the forefront. So what is interesting, when I'm hearing all these things, is so many things to be good at, right? For an HR team. If you were to just share with me, we as HR, we want to level up, we want to grow, but there's so many things that's happening. Where would you actually advise, or where would you share that, hey, this is where these are the steps that I'm taking to grow in my HR journey so that I'm prepared for the next 3 years, 5 years?
Uh, so for me personally,
Yeah.
one really, really strong developmental, kick that I've had recently is digitization. So with Workday implementation in my organization, we've really, been exposed to something that was not there before. It is an amazing tool to use. It really is very personable and employee centric. What I have tried to do in my career, if I go a bit wider,
Hmm.
I tend to, I tend to keep myself relevant. And when I say relevant, it doesn't mean that I'm redundant at any point in time. But I try to make sure that I'm trying to connect with all the people that I can to learn what they do, and that really helps. I think one thing that from an HR perspective that needs to happen, as I said, that you can easily be liked, but for you to be respected, you really need to speak the language of the business, what the business wants, what would motivate the business, what would demotivate the business. So from my end,
Hmm.
I always try to make sure that I'm close to the business, and I try to networking is easy. Networking is good, it has its benefits. If you actually do it rightly, it really helps you build your acumen of the business as well. And I think it's, if you really feel that as an HR person, I see, for me as to be an HR person, I do not want to be HR centric. I focus on HR being business centric, and that's something that keeps me going.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I do. I mean, the whole idea of chief HR officer becoming CEO, it's really the idea of moving towards this whole idea of business and being in the forefront and thinking before the business units leaders, thinking on their behalf when it comes to the businesses and understanding that, yeah, I think they need this, I think they need this talent, and I think they need this development.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing that has really excited me. I think I've been lucky in the organization where I've really, really, in my organizations that I've worked on with, I've really seen HR colleagues to be really, really adding business value.
Right.
And I think that's also one thing that is important. So I think, for aspiring talent, I think it's very important to look at within your organization how you can learn from your colleagues, to start mapping them out. I think we talk so much about development, but we also don't look at it from a perspective of how we can develop through
Exactly.
people. And that's one area where I feel that, I try to do it. I try to do my mapping. I do my skill mapping in terms of people that I can learn from,
Hmm.
and I try to get in touch with them.
Yeah. So you're using the tools for yourself.
And on the other way around. So I'm actually looking at
Yeah.
people who are probably gonna give me something or two.
Exactly, exactly. All right, right. So, if there's one last thing that you want to share with your HR counterparts in HR industry, what would that be?
I'd say it is actually the moment to be an HR. So, experiment, enjoy it, and go to the notion of what I mentioned. Don't get into a situation where you just want to be liked. Be respected for
Right.
you what to do, and do it with all the trust and credibility that you have.
All right. Thank you so much, Hammad. It was a fantastic time with you. So, thank you so much. And for those people who are listening, this is Hammad, and we are really talking about HR Unfiltered and things that is going to be helping us to understand more and more about the HR landscape. So, appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Hammad.
Well, thanks a lot, Jason, for inviting me in. Thanks very much.